It's time to finally take a look at the second installment of the DCU, Supergirl. I know I'm a little delayed here. It's been a crazy July for me. However, it is time to dive into this movie and help you decide whether or not this is the right one for you to watch as a Christian right now. Hey friends, welcome to the channel. I'm your host Tim, and we exist to help Christians live in the world, not of the world, by utilizing our convictions in the movies and shows we watch. Supergirl is rated PG-13, so we're going to dive into 5 areas of convictions that may distract or hinder your relationship with Jesus, any theological themes present within the film, and then wrap it up with my own personal thoughts on Supergirl. So without further ado, let's dive into the Christian conviction meter. And we're kicking things off here with violence and gore, and it's very on par with superhero films we've seen in the past, particularly in line with, of course, 2025, aka last year's Superman film, which of course contains punching, kicking, using laser beams, flying, a whole bunch of different things here as well. It is a little bit different than, of course, Superman, because this one contains a kind of anti-hero vigilante-esque character who is primarily a bounty hunter by the name of Lobo. And Lobo, of course, has a chain with a hook on the end, and he can be pretty brutal with that weapon as well. At the same time, too, there's plenty of uses of swords and axes, spears as well. Not in a medieval sense, but there are weapons throughout the entire film. There also is, of course, explosions and fire and a bunch of that sort of stuff contained within the film. There also is the use of poisoned arrows as well throughout the movie. All stuff that, for the most part, is once again on par with the superhero genre, particularly in the PG-13 range. We're going to be giving this a 3 out of 5 in this category. Our next category is lust. Now, I do want to preface the fact that there is some stuff that may pertain to this category, but we're going to talk about that in our intense/horror scene sequence because it's more on the darker side rather than the lustful side. We'll talk about that later, but in terms of this category in particular, there's nothing here to worry about within the film. We are going to give this a 0 out of 5 in this category. Our next category is substances, and this is arguably the deepest and heaviest category contained within this film because Kara, our lead character, for the most part throughout the film is going from bar to bar to bar, and so we see her drink a ton, to the point where she does wake up drunk and she is a little bit of hungover, it's weird, it's a little complicated. There also is plenty of cigar use throughout the film, but most of our substances are going to relate to alcohol. It's a big prominent part of this film, so we are going to give this a 4 out of 5 in this category. Our next category is profanity, and hell is used. The SH, the BI, MBA words are all used throughout the film. There also is a use of the middle finger as well contained within the film. There's a good chance there are some other languages and things used within the film, but those are the big ones that kind of stood out to me in watching this film. We're going to give this a 3 out of 5 in this category as well. Our last category is intense/horror scenes. While of course this is not a horror movie in any way, shape, or form, this does have a lot of darker elements contained within the film. During parts of the movie, a girl and a dog are poisoned with arrows. It can be pretty dark and disturbing, particularly for younger viewers. At the same time as well, a lot of the action here is intense, and there is lots of death throughout the film. They're all meant to be kind of emotionally impactful moments of people passing away within this film. So that is something to keep in mind. But arguably the darkest portion of this film, which I alluded to when we were talking about the lust category, is our villains. Now, in particular, with what they do, they seek out young girls to breed them. They want to continue their male dominant population, and so what they do is they kidnap girls and they use them. It's very much is human sex trafficking that is contained within this film. It's not to the level of, say, watching something like A Sound of Freedom or a documentary on this sort of subject, but this is a heavier part within the film, not a big plot point, which for me seems like a missed opportunity because that could be something that really invests you into this story because you want her to succeed, to help free these girls from just atrocities that are contained within the film and within the world. And so It's not explicit on screen, but there is references throughout the movie talking about this, so I do want to preface that this is a part of the movie. All of that to say, though, all of this is still fairly on par with a lot of the other superhero-esque genre and a lot of the other superhero films we've seen, particularly within the PG-13 context. But that being said, because of some of the darker elements, I am going to give this a 4 out of 5 just to keep it on the safe side for you when watching this film. And our grand total on the conviction meter is going to be a 14 out of 25. This is definitely a little more darker than what we saw previously with Superman last year. So that is something to keep in mind. Of course, the heavier areas here are going to be in its intensity, particularly with the trafficking subplot throughout the film, and then of course in its substance abuse and all of that that's contained within the film. But as I always say, and I encourage you to do in any of the reviews that we've done here on the channel, if anything we talked about compromises your convictions in any way, shape, or form for Supergirl, don't worry about watching the film. Your convictions are more important. They're God-given. They're there to help you grow in your relationship with Jesus. So if something we said doesn't do that for you, this may not be the movie for you to watch. This leads us beautifully into our next conversation as we dive into some theological themes that are present within Supergirl. And I'll be honest, it has been a while since I watched the film, but I haven't really picked up on any sort of themes present within Supergirl because of the fact that this film is very superhero-esque and it's set within its own world. You're not really going to encounter God or Jesus to a praise and worship extent, or just really mostly any extent within this film. If anything, there is an arc about second chances and things of that sort, which of course always reminds me of this VeggieTale clip. God is a God of second chances. Sorry, just had to throw that one in there because I do enjoy a good VeggieTale reference or two. All that being said though, there is a bit of redemption that Kara kind of goes throughout the film. It's nice to see, but it isn't anything I would say really noteworthy, or we really get to dive into that, which is a bit of a shame, and it's one thing that was frustrating for me in watching the film. But again, this is a superhero movie. It's set within its own universe. There isn't really any explicit references to God, Jesus, Christianity, or the Bible contained within Supergirl. So with that down, it's time to dive into what I think of Supergirl. And with the second entry of the DCU, we get some familiarity with a lot of world building. When it comes to the familiarity, we're diving into another part of the super family, right? We get to see Metropolis, we get to see, of course, Crypto again, we get to see Kal-El, Clark Kent, Superman again, which is always a treat. I am enjoying more and more David Cornsweet's portrayal of Superman, and I think he just knocks it out of the park here in particular. Of course, we met Kara very briefly at the end of course, Superman last year, and so it is nice to really dive into just who her character is, what does she become, and all those different things, rather than just a quick little cameo. It's nice to see, so there is some familiarity in that. At the same time as well, there's a lot of world building because pretty much everywhere except for a little bits and pieces here, we haven't seen before within the DCU. We haven't really experienced Krypton, so we get to experience that. We get to experience what Kara's growing up and things was like, and that's all cool. The one complaint, or one of the complaints I have with this movie though, is a lot of the worlds and stuff we explore feels very familiar, right? And to the extent where it's kind of that grungy, Mad Max, Guardians of the Galaxy sort of vibe. Now, I'm not saying the film is a one-for-one of Guardians or a one-for-one of Mad Max. Those are completely different films compared to this one, but it has a lot of the similar aesthetics, and I would like to see something a little different. If you're exploring sci-fi and exploring space, I want to see different types of planets. Sure, you can go grungy, you can go kind of steampunk if you want to, but I would like to see some other things too. And so that's just a bit of a nitpick there personally. When it comes to our characters though, that is definitely the highlight of the film. In particular, I enjoy Milly Alcock's portrayal of Supergirl. I think she was fantastic with the script that was given, just the way she carries this character, the story that we get to see presented within the film. But I really enjoy her character. She's very different from Clark, which is something I like. And at the same time too, she just carries herself very well within the film. She does great with what she was given in the movie, and overall, I'm excited to see her again in Man of Tomorrow coming out next year. Another big highlight here is Jason Momoa's Lobo. Of course, if you know the backstory of Jason Momoa and his love of Lobo, you know it goes back and back and back and back. So to see an actor portray a character that they've wanted to portray for a while, there's something exciting about that, and we get to see the love that Jason Momoa has for this character. And I love Lobo. I'll be honest, I haven't really read many, if any, DC comics, so I know very, very little about Lobo, but I really enjoy his character, and it makes me want to do a deep dive on Lobo in particular. So that's a win in my book. If you portray a character and you make me want to learn more about your character, it means you did a pretty good job, and I think Jason Momoa did a really solid job. I love his character was a big, big highlight of the film. I wish I could say the same for the villain, because it is running into a very, very, very unfortunate problem that I have seen way too often with a lot of comic book villains and comic book movies, where if your name is not well known or a character that is well beloved by comic book fans, chances are your villain is not going to be all that good. And what I mean by that is there are some solid villains throughout DC and Marvel and all those things. But for the most part, other than the big names or characters that have a really good coterie of supervillains like a Batman or a Spider-Man, a lot of your villains feel weak. So for example, right, Krem is our villain here. Surprised I remember his name. He's just bad for the sake of bad, which to an extent is fine. Not a big deal. What is a big deal though is I want the villain to be intriguing. I want you to make me hate him. And there's not really any point where I feel that. The same is with like Whiplash in Iron Man 2 or Abomination in The Incredible Hulk. These villains are okay, but this film could be so much better if the villain, I think, was just more compelling. And he's just not, like, in any way, because the challenge is you have a lot of cool things, like the subplot with the trafficking. While I know it's an area that not a lot of people like, or not a lot of people like to talk about because it's really serious and it's really dark, that can be a very solid and useful plot point to make me hate this character, and they don't really utilize it all that well. And so that just is disappointing, where it could be a lot better. And the same could really be said with the plot of the movie, the script. There's a lot of conveniences here that I'm not all that crazy about, and it falls flat. They had a lot of few really unique ideas, and I don't think they really landed on one. They just kind of mashed it all together and let's just see how it goes. And it's frustrating when James Gunn has come out and said, in particular, like, we're only going to do scripts that we really, really like. I don't think this is a script you really, really liked. I think this is a film that definitely could have been a lot better. But I also think it could have been a lot later, because with DC, like, sure, setting up Superman as your first one makes a ton of sense. Superman, while yes, Batman is more recognizable to an extent and is a much stronger IP, Superman's one of your bigger, if not your biggest DC character. So you want to lead off with that, right? You want to lead off with your strong characters. I don't know if doing Supergirl right after that was the wisest choice. That being said, though, I do want to make everybody aware, because I know a lot of people have said, oh, after this, DC is dead. No, it's not. If anything, this feels very, very similar to how the MCU started. Now, I'm not saying that DC will become the MCU here. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is it is very similar. Superman and Iron Man are very similar, where they're both critical and financial successes. The Incredible Hulk and Supergirl weren't really received well, and they weren't really financial successes, although Incredible Hulk was able to make some money, and Supergirl, unfortunately, is going to be at a loss. All of that to say, I thought the film was fine. I mean, overall, it was enjoyable. I had a fun time at the theater for the most part. I wouldn't say I was overly disappointed. I left like, okay, it was all right. It was a pretty good film. I don't know if I'm going to watch it again for a little bit. Maybe I will rewatch it in preparation for Man of Tomorrow next year, but who really knows? All of that to say, it was fine. It wasn't all that crazy. Overall was pretty solid. So I am giving it a 7.1 out of 10. Overall, it's fine. It's solid. It's still enjoyable. There's things to like about the movie. Lobo and Supergirl herself are just fantastic. Everything else is fine at best. So anyway, those are my thoughts. So let me know yours down in the comments below. Let's chat all things about Supergirl in the comments. And while you're down there, consider hitting that like and subscribing for us, joining our community here on YouTube. It just helps to send us out into the algorithm further and allows us to reach more Christians to help them utilize their convictions in the movies and shows they watch. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with us here. We truly appreciate it. It means the absolute world to us, especially if you're here at the end. If you are, special little thing for you, let me know your favorite DC character. Drop it down in the comments below. I'd love to talk about that with you all there. If you're interested in my thoughts on Superman, guess what? It's available here somewhere. I forget where I put it. And if you want to see a special video that YouTube is recommending for you personally, it's also available somewhere on the screen now. We'll see you all in the next one.